I am Cadet First Class Ashley Spear, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 33rd National Character and Leadership Symposium's Class of 1973 Muse Family Foundation Keynote Lecture featuring Lieutenant Colonel Nichole Ayers. Before we get to this evening's keynote, we have a special presentation on behalf of the United States Air Force Academy Class of 1974. Tonight, we have the honor of presenting the Brigadier General 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 M. Wakin Character and Leadership Development Award. Please direct your attention to the screen for a video recognizing Brigadier General Wakin's legacy and the prestigious award bestowed in his honor.
We all live by the same professional rules, and we take care of each other from the point of view of our own integrity.
Brigadier General 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 M. Wakin, affectionately known as Mal, joined the Air Force in 1953 and began teaching at the United States Air Force Academy in 1959. He taught at the Academy until 2016, serving our cadets, staff, and faculty as an esteemed instructor and mentor for over 50 years. During his tenure, he served as the head of the Department of Philosophy and was recognized as Emeritus Professor of Philosophy. In honor of General Wakin's exemplary service and commitment to the Academy, the Center for Character and Leadership Development created the Brigadier General 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 M. Wakin Award for Character and Leadership Development. The award formally recognizes current or former Academy staff, faculty members, or teams that have fostered character and leadership development consistent with our Leader of Character framework of living honorably, lifting others to their best possible self, and elevating performance to a noble and common purpose. As a promise to uphold General Wakin's legacy, the Air Force Academy Class of 1974 generously endows this prestigious award.
General Wakin's leadership and character continues to shape us today. We are honored to celebrate his legacy this evening with the Class of '74 Wakin Award. In preparation for the Wakin Award presentation, I am honored to invite the Air Force Academy's 22nd Superintendent, Lieutenant General Tony Bauernfeind, and the Director of the Center for Character and Leadership Development, Colonel Matthew Horner, to the stage to present the award. Room, tent hut.
Please take your seats.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the 2026 Brigadier General 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 M. Wakin Award for Character and Leadership Development is, from the Cadet Wing, Master Sergeant Thomas J. Miller. Master Sergeant Thomas Miller is an elite senior enlisted leader who epitomizes the United States Air Force Academy's core values through transformative leadership and unwavering accountability. Serving as a primary architect of cadet development, Master Sergeant Miller has bridged the gap between rigorous military discipline and intentional mentorship, directly shaping the character of over 1,000 future Air Force and Space Force officers. Master Sergeant Miller's commitment to the Academy's culture of integrity is best demonstrated by his leadership during basic cadet training, where he executed 255 critical actions as the BCT A1. His expertise and accountability was further leveraged when he was hand-selected to lead developmental inquiries following a major wing incident. By training 20 command teams on leadership standards, he restored foundational trust across 3 groups and reinforced the moral fabric of the cadet wing. Master Sergeant Miller led daily operations for 158 cadets, driving a culture of excellence that resulted in 19 commissions, 7 distinguished graduates, and 2 Euro-NATO pilot slots. During a 6-week commander absence, he assumed full leadership of CS-40, propelling the unit to a #1 ranking in the inaugural Colex and the #2 overall squadron in the wing. His reach extends to the most complex cases. He pioneered 24/7 care procedures for a high-risk lieutenant recall, dedicating 110+ hours to a first-of-its-kind developmental plan that exceeded headquarters expectations and demonstrated his profound commitment to the Leader of Character mission. As the officer in charge for the rodeo club and equestrian teams, he stabilized a $144,000 program, maintaining a positive culture that secured 5 competition awards. Furthermore, his seat on the USAFA admissions committee allowed him to apply his disciplined judgment to the selection of the class of 2030, ensuring the next generation of leaders meets the highest standards of excellence. Thank you, General Bauernfein, Colonel Horner, and Master Sergeant Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the departure of the official party. Please take your seats. Before we continue, the Academy would like to once again recognize the class of 1974 for endowing the Wakin Award, thereby ensuring the continued recognition of exemplary character and leadership at the Academy. Now we will begin the class of 1973 Muse Family Foundation Keynote Lecture. Tonight's presentation is generously supported by our NCLS flagship sponsor, the United States Air Force Academy Class of 1973, and the Muse Family Foundation, which have generously supported this keynote lecture since 2004. I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Nichole Ayers, U.S. Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel Ayers is a Colorado native. She graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 2011 with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and later earned a master's degree in computational and applied mathematics from Rice University in Houston. As an instructor in both the T-38A and F-22 Raptor, Lieutenant Colonel Ayers has flown missions across the nation and internationally. Lieutenant Colonel Ayers was selected by NASA to join the 2021 astronaut candidate class and reported for duty in January of 2022. On her first spaceflight, she served as the pilot of NASA's SpaceX Crew 10 mission, spending 146 days as a flight engineer during Expeditions 72 and 73, and completed 1 spacewalk totaling 5 hours and 44 minutes. I introduced her earlier as Lieutenant Colonel Ayers, but friends and family in the Air Force know her as Vapor. Please join me in welcoming Vapor.
There we go. Good evening. Good afternoon, good evening. It's really good to be back here. It's actually pretty deeply personal for me to be back here. As you heard, I grew up in Colorado Springs, just down the road, and then I went to Woodland Park High School and graduated from there, and then my path eventually led me here. I first learned about responsibility and leadership here at the Academy, and the other thing that I learned is about courage. We're going to talk about courage today. The courage to lead is our theme, and so I want to talk through what we learn here at the Air Force Academy in terms of courage is not a big heroic moment. It's not brief. It's something that you choose over and over again, and it's a habit that you make, and it's a commitment. Before we get too far into the courage portion of this, I did want to show you a short video, just where courage can get you.
The ISS is one of the only places we can conduct a long duration research in microgravity. So we use the ISS as a test bed to develop new space technology and to better understand how space environment affects human bodies.
The International Space Station is absolutely a proving ground to deep space exploration. The science that we conduct here, it's really organized curiosity and organized ways to get answers.
Let's go back to cassette 1 for a minute and get you to hold that up to the camera where we can get a good view of it, please. Okay, looks great.
You know, at any given time here on the International Space Station, there are over 200 experiments going on, whether it's inside, outside, looking at Earth, looking at deep space. So we do a lot of different types of research. We use microgravity to learn lots of things about different processes and different science. So physics, fluid dynamics, chemical dynamics, mechanical, material science, all sorts of things. We learn so much when we take the force of gravity away about those small forces and processes that we just can't see on Earth.
Beautiful, we see that. You'll put it into the bubble wrap bag, and then once that's sealed, it'll go into the labeled Ziploc.
It's easy to say space station's been flying for 25 years. It benefits everybody on Earth. But when you are living it year to year to year, you see these like logarithmic leaps in our ability to do science on the space station. And every single year that space station flies, there is more benefit to everybody on Earth. Always dream big, never give up on your dreams, and believe in yourself. It can take you to some pretty crazy places, huh?
Yeah, it can.
"250 miles off the Earth, the 93rd U.S. spacewalk in support of station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades took place on May 1st. NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nichole Ayers entered the vacuum of space to complete 2 tasks. First, they worked to install a rollout solar array modification kit on the station's port truss structure. The International Space Station Rollout Solar Arrays, or IROSA, will boost power generation capabilities by 30% and will be installed on a future spacewalk. Then they relocated an antenna that communicates with visiting vehicles. This was McClain's 3rd spacewalk and Ayers' first. Overall, this was the 275th spacewalk in space station program history.
And we have undocking. Physical separation confirmed at 5:15 p.m. Central Time, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, as the station and Dragon flew 260 miles over Jakarta, Indonesia.
Per hour. Again, it'll continue to slow down. Incredible view there of the Dragon as it re-entered.
All right. Hopefully that's a little motivation for you, but I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of my background and talk to you about the things that I've found challenging throughout my career. So, like I said, I graduated from the Academy in 2011, but when I first showed up to the Academy, it's probably one of the first times that I started to really experience some doubt. You know, you show up here, you're surrounded by motivated, accomplished human beings, and you start to wonder if everybody has it figured out. Or am I enough? Should I be here? Do I belong here? And so the first real encounter that I had with internal doubt was when I showed up here. And I think that something that you need to learn early on about courage is that Courage is not the absence of weakness, and it's not the absence of doubt, excuse me. Courage is not the absence of doubt, and doubt is not a weakness. When you have doubt, it just means that you're doing something important and something that matters. Courage really is choosing to move forward despite that doubt and despite that internal monologue. I then went to pilot training after a couple years at Rice University. And again, I started to experience a little doubt there. I've always wanted to be an astronaut from about this big. Growing up in Colorado, you know, I got to see the mountains and see the night sky without city lights, and you get a really big idea of the scale and humility that comes with exploration. And when you're a little kid and you say, well, I want to be an astronaut, everybody says, yeah, dream big, you can do it. But the older you get, you start to hear different responses, and the dynamic changes a little bit. You know, you start to get the look like, oh, maybe you want to set some realistic goals. And so one of the first real experiences with that was actually in pilot training. Not long after these pictures right here on the right-hand side were taken, I was asked by one of my instructor pilots, what do you want to fly? And I said, I want to fly the F-22. And he asked me, well, why do you want to fly the F-22? And I said, well, I love the mission, first off. It's one of the most technologically advanced airplanes that we have, and I think it would be a really great path for me trying to get to NASA and become an astronaut. And he laughed at me. So when you become an adult and as you grow in your professional life, people start to laugh. The dynamic changes. People start to question, is that really what you want to do? Are you the right person for that job? And so the doubt isn't just the internal doubt that I experienced here at the Academy, but now you start having external doubt as well from the people around you. Fast forward, I got to fly the T-38 Adder. So we were the adversary. We played the bad guys and flew against the F-22s at Langley Air Force Base. That was my first assignment. And I got selected for that job as a lead-in to the F-22. And that was a really fun assignment. We got to fly with the F-22s, but I sat down with my commander at one point, and he asked me, what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to go in your career? And I said, well, I'd like to go to test pilot school. And he goes, why test pilot school? And now I'm wondering, do I tell him what I want to do? Or do I just say, oh, I think the test world seems interesting, and that seems like it'd be a good fit for me. And in that moment, I decided I'm going to tell him. So I said, well, sir, I'd like to be an astronaut someday. And I will never forget his response. He said, we're going to get you to TPS then. He didn't laugh. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask any other questions. He was like, that makes sense. Let's do it. Let's get you there. So he actually lit a little fire under me again, got me back on my professional life goals. And so I went on to fly the F-22. You can see a bunch of pictures up there. I got to fly the F-22 in combat. And flying the F-22 is another point where I think a little bit of fear or doubt comes in. That airplane is the representation of precision, dominance, and technological superiority. But behind that airplane and behind every jet that we fly is just a human. And it's that human who has to continue to move forward, who has to continue to fly, and has to take responsibility for their actions, knowing that sometimes you can't undo what you decide to fly or how you decide to fly. I was actually airborne on a deployment over Syria the day that Turkey invaded Syria in October of 2019. We had no idea that Turkey was invading Syria that day. As the lane commander in charge of the entire area of responsibility that day in northern Syria, I did not know, I was not aware. I was actually on the tanker, so we do what we call yo-yo ops. So I was on the tanker getting gas. My wingman was just south of me. And I hear a radio call, and we hear the TOT, or the time over target, so the time that Turkey is going to drop their bombs, and the kill containers, so the area that they're going to drop their bombs in. I'm on the tanker, which is a significant emotional event anyways, trying to stay in the right spot so you can get gas. And I look inside, and we are 4 minutes from when they're going to drop their weapons, and I am in their kill container. Heart rate's a little high at that point. The tanker has been told on a different radio frequency that they're safe, they're in a safe area. So I had the tanker turn south. We started to turn south towards my wingman where he was flying. And all of us watched as Turkish F-16s climbed up above my altitude and dropped weapons 4 minutes after I was just there in that kill container. What I learned flying in combat is that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is making the decisions and relying on your training and relying on your teammates, even when your heart rate's high, and even when you got a little fear going on. Fast forward a little bit, March of 2020, so just after that deployment, NASA put out a call for applications for the 2021 class. And again, I hesitated. I hesitated for 2 reasons. First off, there's a narrative about what an astronaut looks like. Spoiler alert, we hire all sorts of careers. We hire pilots, we hire doctors, we hire scientists, engineers, geologists. We hire anybody who's really good at their job, has some interpersonal skills and some operational experience. But specifically for pilots, we require 1,000 hours in a high-performance jet. I had 1,012 hours. And historically, they've only ever hired test pilots. And I was not a test pilot, and I was not headed to test pilot school anytime soon. The second reason I hesitated, as I went to figure out how I'm going to tell my commander that I want to apply for the NASA astronaut class, I was concerned about how that would be received, wanting to leave the Raptor community. Would that reflect poorly on my commitment to the Raptor, commitment to the Air Force, and to my service to the country? My commander was on vacation at the time, so I had to call him. My DO, as soon as he heard it, he was excited for me, and he's like, "You have to call him, Vapor, you gotta call him." So I called my commander, I said, "Hey, sir, I have a question to ask you, but I don't know exactly how to say it." And eventually I got around to admitting that I wanted to apply to be an astronaut. And again, I will never forget this response. He goes, "Vapor, why are you hesitating? What the heck?" He's like, "That's awesome. How do we get you there? How do I help you get there?" So I think that it's important when you think about courage, especially in leadership, how do you encourage your mentees, right? How do you be a mentor that helps those people get to where they want to be? Regardless of the narrative, regardless of the path that they should be on. How do you as a mentor help that person get there? And then for me, how do I not let fear make that decision for me? I think the only reason I applied is because I would have regretted not applying, and I would have regretted letting fear make that decision for me. And I think it's important to realize that courage is about knowing you're on the right path, regardless of the narrative, and knowing that you can make a difference, even if you don't fit the mold. Been at NASA for a few years now. I was lucky, I got to go to space really quickly. Right after I graduated, I got assigned. And I often get asked what it's like to sit atop of a rocket. And I will say it's sobering. You've trained for a year and a half or longer. You know all of the contingencies, you know everything that could go wrong. You've trained for every emergency, and you're aware of the danger. And I think courage in this moment is staying in that seat. How do you stay in that seat? Well, for me, it's about trusting the team that got us there. You know, on an airplane, you do the walk around, you do the pre-flight, you've read the maintenance documents, you know everything about that jet inside and out. Human spaceflight is a much bigger team sport. So for me, it was about relying on and trusting the engineers and the technicians who built that rocket, who tested that rocket, and the thousands of people on the ground and their professionalism and their desire to make this a successful mission. You have to rely on the people around you to stay in that seat. The other thing that I think is really important here is that knowing the mission is worth the risk. We have quite the mission. I'll talk to that in a second. But knowing the mission is worth the risk. I think everybody in this room at some point will be in a seat like that, whether literally or figuratively. So you have to figure out how to stay seated. Again, courage isn't ignoring the danger. It's knowing the danger exists and relying on the people that got you there to take that next step. For me, the other part of staying in that seat is the support system that's around me. Astronauts are humans just like you. We have personal lives that we have ups and downs, so finding a good support system is huge. These pictures are of my sister and her family. The bottom right one is actually in quarantine. Got to see them one last time before I launched. And then the other two humans in those pictures are a couple of my best friends. They're actually here this weekend supporting me. So finding a support group that will keep you in that seat. Friends, family, whoever it may be. Fellow cadets. Find people that you can rely on and people that you can call when you've had a bad day so you can get in that seat and stay there. Talked about the worth of the mission and why is it worth the risk. For me, this is why. I threw a bunch of pictures up here. These are probably some of my favorite pictures from our mission. You got to hear about a lot of the science that we did while we were on board. That upper left-hand picture is Ann and I doing an experiment that involved mixing DNA and mRNA. Bottom left one is about the human science that we do. That's I've got a bunch of electrodes hooked up to my legs. And all of that human science is actually volunteer, so each of us get an informed briefing on what we're volunteering for, and then we choose. Really, I just volunteered for any experiment they would let me do, but all of this human science is volunteer. The upper right-hand corner is actually Colorado Springs. I don't know how well you guys can see that up there. But the academy is on the right-hand side of that, so north is to the right. Academy is on the right-hand side of that, and then Woodland Park actually is just at the top of that picture. And then the bottom right-hand side is in Aurora. It's one of the more active auroras that we got to see. The sun, we're in a solar max, so the sun was really active while we were up there. And then that middle picture you saw in the video as well, that's a gigantic jet. That's what happens when a thunderstorm interacts with the upper atmosphere. So for me, the worth was the science that we did on board, the Earth observations, the pictures that we took. We helped with disaster relief for fires and floods and landslides, hurricanes. We took pictures of the aurora. We took pictures of city nightlights for light pollution studies. And we did hundreds of hours of science, both human science, the DNA that I talked to. We did combustion science, all sorts of things. In addition, we did a lot of maintenance. You do maintenance inside the station and outside the station. We're the plumbers, technicians, electricians. We're the maids. We do it all. But we're keeping our national laboratory orbiting the Earth. And so to me, that was fulfilling, and that was worth the risk. Talked about maintenance outside the station. You guys saw a little bit of the EVA that we did, or the Spacewalk. Spacewalk day was my favorite day. But it's a long day. It's an exhausting day. This is a great picture, so it's another example of relying on the team. So Tak and Johnny are the two men that got Ann and I suited up and put into the hatch, or through the hatch into the airlock, and then they close the indoor hatch, and we start the depress and start our day. Talked about flying the F-22, talked about sitting atop a rocket, both of which I think are at the tip of the operational spear. But I think spacewalks take it one step further. Spacewalks are probably the most exposed thing that a human being can do. When you're inside the space station, you look out the window. This is the cupola, the window to the world. There's a ton of structure around it. You can see all that structure around each of those windows, so you feel very safe when you're looking out the window. We have a lot of windows on Space Station. You can look at the world from a different angle, but there's always structure around that window. So it feels very safe while you're there to watch the world go by. When Ann opened that hatch, I was suddenly vividly aware of just how thin my visor was. We were at the vacuum of space. She opened the hatch, she could see the world. I wasn't quite there yet. We kind of go in feet to head. So I had the control panel that controls the depress, and her job is to open the hatch. But suddenly I'm like, we are at the vacuum of space. We are hatch open, and I am in a spacesuit with a thin visor. Best selfie ever, I think, if you ask me. But Anne gave me some really great advice as we got ready for this EVA, or the spacewalk. She said, keep your world small. She had done a couple before on her previous missions. Keep your world small. Both of us may or may not be afraid of heights, so she knew what to expect from me. She said, whatever your task is, focus on that. Keep your eyes on your task. Keep your eyes on the space station. Don't hop out the hatch and look immediately down at the world. Her heart rate spiked on her first one, and it took her a little while to recover. She's like, it's going to take you a little while to recover if you do that. So I said, all right. First task was getting out of the hatch. You guys saw us, we put the modification kit together for a rollout solar array that's going to be installed later. And if you think about it, it's a giant erector set that you're going to put together and then put a big solar array on. So the bag that carries all of that equipment was over 8 feet long and over 300 pounds. So our first task was getting that out of the hatch and out of the airlock and then attached to my spacesuit so that I could take it out to the work site. So I'm keeping my world small, focusing on this task. We get the bag out, it's attached to me, tethers are good to go. Feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident, kept my world small, like, yeah, this is gonna be good. So holding on to the handrail right outside the hatch, and I look down. Woo! Nope, too soon. 250 miles, I took this picture later during the EVA, but we're 250 miles above the Earth. And my brain is like, we're gonna fall. That's it. Like, there is no convincing your brain otherwise in that moment. But in that moment, heart rate's high, a little bit of fear. It's just me and Anne outside. And we have to go do a task. We have to go do a lot of tasks. We're 10 minutes into this 6-hour EVA. You're out there, you're exposed, but you're the only one that can push through it and continue to move and move on to the next task. Relying on all of our training, we trained for months in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, our big pool there at Johnson Space Center. We've done this particular set of tasks multiple times. We prepped for over a month on the space station before we went out the hatch. So you have to rely on your training, fall back on everything that you know, and put your hand in front of the other one and start moving up that handrail to that work site, regardless of how far above the Earth you are. We got out there, installed the modification kit, moved the antenna. You guys heard all of that in the video earlier. And the picture on the left-hand side there, I'm actually climbing up a portion of that modification kit. It was an unplanned maneuver, and it was a long reach. So I'm 6 feet tall, I have a 6'2" wingspan. I'm pretty long in terms of the astronaut corps, pretty tall. And that reach was significant. It's a longer reach than we ask on a normal basis of an astronaut. And it's on a modification kit that just got installed, and there are a lot of conditions upon which I'm allowed to translate on that. Translate parallel with it, I can't put more than 40 pounds of force into it, and I can't do a plane change, which means I can't switch body positions or move my feet around. But I have to go get those cables that are at the top there. May or may not have put 2 waist tethers down and made sure I was completely safe before I made that reach. But it's another moment where I know that the risk is worth it. Because if I can't go get those cables, we cannot spin the solar array. And so we'll be in a reduced power state until we can get another spacewalk out there to fix it. So knowing that you have to make the step, you know it's safe, but it's uncomfortable, and you have to keep pushing. The other part of spacewalks is that they're really exhausting. That spacesuit is pressurized to 4.3 psi, which doesn't really mean much to you, but what I will say is that your hands in the gloves, every time you squeeze your hand, it's like squeezing a tennis ball. So every time I have to actuate a hook or grab something, it's like squeezing a tennis ball, or grab a handrail as we translate out or move along the station. So after about 6 hours of that, you're pretty tired. I checked in with my body about 4 hours in. I was like, yeah, I could totally do 2 more hours of this. I feel great. As soon as we got back inside the hatch was closed and locked, I was done. My hands were done, my arms were smoked, I was exhausted. It's not only physically exhausting, but it's mentally exhausting. But we went out and we got the mission done. This was actually a pretty dynamic day. We had a bunch of changes in priorities as we went through the tasks, which is what caused me to have to go back and grab those cables. But being willing to go back, make that reach, and leave the station in a better state than we started. You have to push through the high heart rate. You have to push through the uncomfort. What I'd like you guys to get out of today is that courage is not this big bravado thing. It's making the decision in small moments throughout your whole life and making a commitment to moving forward. Even if you don't feel ready, continuing to choose to go out the hatch. I think for me, courage is speaking up when you're not ready, when something doesn't sit right, when maybe there's a safety issue, but you're not sure where to say it or who to tell. Just bring the issue up. Make the statement. For me, courage shows up in all sorts of altitudes. Here at the Academy, choosing to stay and find friends that help me get through it. Sitting on top of a rocket and staying seated. Going out the hatch, looking down but still moving forward. I think each and every one of you will have your version of the hatch at some point in your life. Courage is being willing to step out that hatch, moving forward even when you don't feel ready, even if you don't think you're qualified, knowing that you are enough. Thank you for choosing to be here. Thank you for choosing to be those mentors that are going to encourage people to chase their dreams. Thank you for being the peer that's going to help your friends. My peer is right here. He's watching me right now. Thank you for being the friend that's going to push your friend to go chase that dream. Thank you for choosing to move forward even in the face of fear.